Bill Charlton. I'm the president of the Pender Harbor Rotary Club. And 2 years ago, we hosted a similar successful meeting at the Pender Harbor Legion, I think which helped all of us understand the complexities and challenges of governing Area A, our portion of the regional district. So today, along with my co-host, Dave Milligan. Dave, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
The president of the Pender Harbor Chamber of Commerce, and Peter Robson, the president of the Pender Harbor and Area Residents Association. Hello, Peter.
Hi, everybody.
We're hosting a similar meeting, which we hope will be as successful and informative as the last. So I know you don't want to listen to me. So at this time, I'm going to introduce you to our Area A representative, Leonard Lee, a 2.5-year veteran in this position, who will continue with the budget portion of the meeting. So please put your hands together virtually, of course, and extend a warm welcome to your representative, Len Lee. Over to you, Len.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, guys. I'm Leonard Lee, as Bill said, SCRD Director for Area A. I'd like to introduce our SCRD CAO, Dean McKinley. And Aidan is having trouble with his video, but he's our manager of communications and engagement. So he helped me put this presentation together. So thank you, Aidan.
Thank you, Director.
So this session is to last for 1 hour. And the purpose of it is to provide information on the proposed projects and the resulting tax increases prior to the round 2 discussions. And if you have questions, please place them in the chat throughout the presentation, and we'll collect the questions and we'll ask them at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to ask the question yourself, you can raise your hand and we can pop you up on the screen here as well. And we'll do that at the end as well. I'd like to acknowledge that the SCRD is located on the traditional territories of the Seashell and Squamish nations. So I'm going to pop up the presentation now, screen share the presentation, and get started on it. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. So welcome to today's information session. It's going to be a short presentation, 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll have questions at the end. And as I said before, feel free to type your questions into the Q&A whenever they strike you. This is the second information session that we've held, and you can watch the first one that was hosted by our Area B Director, Lori Pratt. It's on YouTube and you can access it through our website. That and other information is available there at www.scrd.ca/budget. So the purpose of this information session is, just as it says, to provide an overview of the SCRD Round 1 budget, review the taxation ahead of Round 2 budget, and talk about the projects that are being considered in Round 2. And really the aim is to answer questions such as, why are my taxes going up? How much will I be paying? And what are you getting for it? So this is the budget timeline, Round 1 budget. We had finished our pre-budget in November. We did the Round 1 budget on February 1st, 2nd, and 5th. So by then we'd actually had 5 full days of reviewing budgets. And right now, this is where we are, and we're making presentations to interested people on what's happening, so everybody is aware. The budget's actually going to be adopted at the end of March, which is a legislative requirement. But we will be doing some more work on the budget on March 4th and 5th. So there's We still time to make changes. So this is things that are impacting this year's budget. We've got 109 projects that's been moved forward from 2020 to 2021. We have a bit of a challenge now in 2021 because we used up all our reserves to fund projects last year in an attempt to keep taxation low, but we still got to finish those projects, and we have new ones to do like usual. Staffing is also a challenge for us, and it's impacting this year's budget. We delayed hiring last year as much as we could, and we deferred some into 2021. And of course, we're all very aware of the emerging items such as COVID and the need to keep our fire departments going. A little more on the projects. The COVID-19 means you have to have more staff and extra precautions, so slows people down. And also another COVID one that's a little less apparent is that there's less user fees from our facilities because we have to limit the number of people going into them. We also have a asset renewal challenge. Things like four of our dams need work, and the chlorination system at Chapman water treatment plant needs to be updated to meet the regulations. And these assets have not been updated in years, and updates are long overdue, and they contribute to the number of projects that we're looking at this year. And I mentioned earlier we utilized reserves in the past for the projects, but the reserves are depleted to a point where we need to look at taxation. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. In 2020, our first cut of the budget was 12.9%. This is the overall SCRD budget. And by using the reserves, we went down to 5.3% increase. In Area A, we actually went down to less than 1%. But using reserves is not a very good tactic. You use up your capital, and you're going to have to replenish that for the future major replacements that are going to occur. Everything ages and has to be replaced. And there's other problems with utilizing reserves like that. We used up our operations reserves, which is quite bad because we're not allowed to borrow money for operations. So without that reserve, if you end up with a major thing that needs to be fixed that you didn't plan for, you basically just don't have the money. You can't do it because you're not allowed to borrow for reserves, and you're not allowed to move money between services. So for instance, we can't move money from a pot that we collected for South Pender to work on North Pender. They're standalone things, and under legislation, we're not allowed to move money around inside those services. That's a requirement of the SCRD, legislative requirement. The people that use this service are the ones that pay for the service, and that's the only money you can use to do that. Same thing's true for Egmont. We collect Egmont Fire. The taxes that we collect to run the Egmont Fire is only used for the Egmont Fire. So there's more projects, more challenges to meet the needs of the growing population. We know the population just keeps growing, and we have to take care of them. And the water and the solid waste management, because of ever increasing regulations, means more expertise and more staffing to meet them. And the COVID emerging items was COVID. I mentioned that earlier, but we have infrastructure projects such as our landfill closure. And we also need funding to ensure our fire departments keep going. So those are all the things, or some of the things that our 2021 projects are addressing, and that your tax money is going to. So this year, we had 117 new projects and 109 carryover 226 projects we're trying to work this year. Just going through the list is quite daunting, but we've done it, 5 days of it, and it's a record year for us at the SCRD. And a full list of all these projects, all 226, can be found at the scrd.ca/budget. They're all there if you'd like to look at them all. So, got to flip my little notes here so I don't forget to tell you good stuff. Here's some of the bigger ones for 2021. A section of the Seashell Landfills reached capacity, so it's got to be closed. And there's also increased regulatory and environmental standards at our landfill that we have to meet. And this comes, the whole bundle of projects comes to $2.5 million. We need upgrades to our dam to meet regulatory standards. This is a must do. And besides, it is well past due. We sure don't want any of our dams to fail. And we're continuing with the groundwater investigations. We need to get drinking water for the south part of our coast so we can avoid the 3 and 4 restrictions. And that's 1.37 million for this year, the investigations. And we need a chlorine system at Chapman water treatment plant. It's well past due, and it's around $1 million. And the emergency services mentioned earlier, it's our fire departments basically, and a little bit of emergency planning for major disasters. We've done a little bit of that this year as well. So a little closer to home, in the North Pender, there's 240,000 projects, and it's a new emergency generator. The old one failed. We're going to find the leaks that are occurring in the water that we can't see. We got a new system that can do that now. And we're going to start on a water supply plan, a long-term water supply plan. And we're also going to do a little bit of investigations on North Pender to see what causes the turbidity and see if we can put something in place to stop it. And on South Pender, we have it's called the Dogwood Reservoir. It's failed, but we need to do a study and figure out just how essential it is. We believe that we need it for the proper pressure to fight fires. So we're pretty sure we're going to have to fix it, but we're going to look at it real close first. And the McNeil and Harris Dam upgrades in there. I don't know if everybody's aware, there's a dam called on the Harris Lake behind the McNeil. So we actually have 2 dams on the South Pender. We've got a water treatment plant upgrade for South Pender. And as usual, we've got water mains replacements because our water mains are old and they're failing. And when they fail, people are out of water for until we get them fixed again. So what's costing more? Like the individual projects themselves are costing more. It costs more to do the same work. And that's because labor costs are up, material costs, transportation's all up. And when I say labor, I mean contractors' labor too. We hire quite a few contractors and they bid on the jobs, but their labor's higher. And so it's just, if you want to get the job done, that's just the facts of life. And we have regular maintenance that we have to do on our assets, and we have regulatory compliance that we have to meet. And regulatory compliance are things like water safety and make sure we're not polluting with our septic systems. And of course, we know about the operations costs of insurance, fuel, and maintenance. They always are going up. And this is one that you don't really think about really, but there's an increased volume of green waste that we have to take care of. And there's also an increased volume of recycling. And recycling is not free. We end up having to subsidize it in order to continue to do it. And we sure don't want to bury the garbage or the things that can be recycled. So here is the total operating budget for this year, and it's 48.7 million. That's the things, it's expense. So the expenses that are I'm going to talk about in the projects are in the projects, but of course, because we have to expense it, we pull them out. And so I'll just run through this wheel here. I'll go around. The recreational and cultural services for 28.6%. Those are things like our pool, Bend Harbor Pool, community parks, library services. The 6% in general government is things like me, paying me, our CAO's office, our corporate services office is the 6% general government. Those are the kind of things that are in there. Protective services at 8% are things like fire department. And for us, it's just the Egmont Fire Department. But in this one, because this is company-wide, we're looking also at the Roberts Creek and Half Moon Bay and Gibson's fire departments in there. Transportation services are the obvious one, buses, but also street lighting is in there. And environmental services are the solid waste and the recycling I was talking about earlier. The water and wastewater is a big chunk of it, and we know what those are. Those are our North and South Pender, Egmont, which is regional, Arrows Cove regional, and the Chapman systems, and there is a few on the islands. And health services is the cemetery, and for us, the Pender Harbor Health Clinic is in there. And the final one is the planning and development services right here. And that is the rural planning. Things like, do I need a building permit? Can I build on that lot? You know, those kind of things. Our OCP being updated. And it's also, though, there's economic development is in there. And so things like Scredo and our chamber. So there, I'm right around the wheel now. Now there's another part of it, and that is the capital budget. This is the things that you can capitalize, the hard things you can hold, see, touch. And I won't go around the categories again because now you know them. But you can sure see where the bulk of the money's going, the water and wastewater. And then after that, it's the fire departments. And then we've got the environmental services and the buses, because again, we're talking the whole SCRD here. But here we are in Area A. And let me just flip through my notes to make sure I don't miss anything here. Got ahead of myself. So the 40.81, that's the biggest chunk of our tax dollars. And when you think about the Pender Harbor Pool and our library services, that's where they are. They're in there. General government, we talked about that one. Protective services, I should explain that one. It's Egmont Fire Department and its bylaw enforcement is there in protective services. Now, so really what this chart is, if you're thinking about this chart and this percentage, we're really talking about the Earls Cove and Egmont area, because the SCRD doesn't manage our local fire department, the Pender Harbor Fire Department. It's managed by Pender Harbor Improvement District, which is run by a volunteer board of directors. And they decide what they need. They send the request to the province puts it on your tax notice, on my tax notice. And the money, when it's collected, is given back to that improvement district and they spend it, including the salaries in whatever way they want to. And another thing I'd like to mention while I'm talking about it, our Pender Harbor Improvement District, our fire departments were the first ones to offer the extended health benefits to the firefighters. And this year, we're able to do the same thing for our fire departments. It's in the budget. And so we're doing that for them. And I think it's really well spent money. Volunteer fire departments are just extremely valuable. And they're keeping all of our taxes down, by the way. Now, here's the environmental services, solid waste and recycling. It's a big chunk. The health services are bigger for us because we fund our Pender Harbor Health Center out of that. And it's a bigger chunk of the pie at 66.17%. And then we have the planning and development, and in there is the building services, building inspectors, all that stuff, and that's our share of that. Right around the wheel again. So here's our proposed taxation for Area A. And again, this one is really just Earls Cove and Egmont dollars because of the fire protection. Now, Pender Harbor, if I was to put Pender Harbor up here, it would be lower because the fire protection wouldn't be shown because the SCRD doesn't look after that. But when you look at your taxes, it's back there. So when you look at your tax notice when it comes this year, and you compare it to your tax notice from last year, if your property was 500,000, you would be paying $285 more. And the figure changes as the value of the property goes up. And that's because some services are fixed cost, like paying back the pool debt and the water themselves. They're on a utility statement, and everybody pays the same rate for a year. But if the variable ones go up by 100,000 of assessment. So just quickly, $428 more if you're on a $750,000 property, and $571 more if you're on $1 million property, lucky enough to be on $1 million property. So what's next? Today, we're at the information session. We're going to go to round 2 budget, March 4th and 5th. There's more of these information sessions happening. This afternoon, area D, E, and F are having another one of these at 6 o'clock if you want to tune in. And all of these sessions are being recorded on YouTube, and they're available on the SCRD website at www.scrd.ca/budget. And you can go back and look at them if you'd like. And also the link to join any of the future information sessions. So after March 4th and 5th, we'll be spending 2 days going through the budget again. There's some that we're considering because we need more information on. And we might even go back and consider some of the ones that are already on the budget. Actually, we will. And we can adjust them still at this time. But then by the time we adopt the budget and we vote on the budget at a board meeting, we have to do that by the date shown there, end of March. And that's a legislative requirement. And that's a date that can't be moved. So I'm going to stop the share, and we will welcome questions.
Thank you, Director Lee. It's Aidan here again. My apologies, still having issues with video right now. So if you have a question, you can post it into the Q&A. I'm not too sure if any of the panelists would like to ask a question. Please feel free to do so if you want to unmute yourself. Yeah, and we'll just wait for some questions to come on in here.
I've got a question, Len, if I may.
Sure.
I'm curious about bylaw enforcement, funding for bylaw enforcement. It seems we haven't had any bylaw enforcement really in any meaningful way on the coast for quite a few years. Is there going to be money put aside to try to fix that?
Yes, we actually are doing 3 things. to work on the bylaw problem. The first thing is that we've actually hired another. Well, we have it in the budget. I don't believe the hiring's actually finished yet. Dean is nodding. We're doing interviews. When that,
Go ahead, though.
oh, okay. What that will do, though, is that will give us extra horsepower at the GM level. And so we're going to move bylaw enforcement into to one of the GMs that has the time. It's going to be in Hall under planning. And so he'll have time to work on all the things that need to be done, all the paperwork. We're hiring, we have hired a person to assist Matt in the bylaw area. That was a position that was vacant and we hadn't filled. And so we filled that position we've already filled it this year. And that will allow us to get the packages together, get all the information organized, answer the phones and do that kind of thing. And we've actually, in the budget, we've got a senior bylaw enforcement official there that we intend to hire. And that will beef up our bylaw. And it's really important to do that because with the short-term rental situation and the noises that's occurring and our inability to address them, we need to get this done before summertime. So I consider it fairly high priority to get that done.
And Len, if I could just add just a tiny bit of additional context to that. And I wish I had the email in front of me because not long ago we had a bit of a question around our bylaw department, like how many outstanding calls are there? How busy are they? How understaffed are we? What's the current situation? Because for a lot of people, it does seem like there's not a lot of bylaw enforcement going on based on long-running complaints. And what we learned when our bylaw staff, who have been really shorthanded for at least the last year, what was really telling was how much they actually did. Like the number of calls, the number of investigations that they actually completed far and away outstripped what was outstanding, although the number outstanding was very high. And this last year, I don't know if it's there's somehow a bit of a COVID relation. Some of the work in some of our various departments has gone up. Bylaw is one of them, but for the size of the staff we have, they worked really hard. We recognize that we need additional horsepower. We need probably improved mechanisms within the bylaws and our ticketing mechanisms themselves. And so we've got a lot of work to do, but there are some budget proposals directly targeted at providing some additional support for the bylaw services department. Hopefully that helps out a bit, Len.
So we have a couple of other questions here that have come in. Jeff McGuire, I see you have your hand raised. I'll get to you now in a moment. Just in the Q&A chat here, Glenn is asking, what are the priorities for the capital plan and what plans are in place for infrastructure grants from the federal government?
Yes, that's a good question. I was just looking for my my notes on the percentage of, but I can't find it. The grants are by and far the largest piece of funding for all of our projects. And I wish I could find my little note. This is not good that I can't find it because I actually had the actual percentage. Perhaps I'll look for that and get back to that one and get the exact percentage of the grants.
Yeah, for sure. We can come back to that. Jeff McGuire, I've just promoted you to a panelist there if you want to ask your question. You can go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask, I guess it's a question for Len. I want to ask you to speculate a little bit on this because it's a little bit unfair. But I'm wondering what next year's and the year after tax changes might look like. On one hand, this could be easing us into a series of tax increases over the next few years. Or on the other end of the continuum, no, this is the big bang tax increase and we should be looking good going forward from there. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, I asked our chief financial officer if I could say that this was the big year and everything was going to be cost of living. And she said, well, you're living in a dream world. She says, what her answer to me was that we have infrastructure that's old, really old, and we haven't looked after it. And we have no choice but to fix it. Well, we do have a choice. I mean, we could let it fail and let people be out of water for a long time while we fix it, but that ain't the way to tackle it. So yes, there will be tax increases in the future over and above the cost of living. How big that is, I'm hoping it's nothing like this year. But to say we're just going to a cost of living is, no, that's not going to happen. We all like our pools. We all like our fire departments to be well equipped. We need the water there all the time. And those things are what I believe people would consider essential. And so they are. That's what's driving our budget this year. And that's what will be driving our budget next year. So if I get my crystal ball out, I hope it isn't as high as this year. That's all. That's my goal. Did that answer your question, Jeff?
Yes. And good for you for being straightforward on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got another question here in the chat. It's from Thomas, and he's asking if we can give a percentage increase on the proposed taxation increase. So what percentage is it? I'm not too sure if you have that at hand or not, Director Lee.
Well, a percentage increase is all relative. That's the problem. It's dependent on what services you're getting. Right now, and I'll give you an approximate percentage, right? I have to dig into the exact percentage. It will be, though, in the Harbor Spiel here in the end of the month, by the way. I did put an article in there on that. But I have one right here. And if you're a person that's living in Egmont and Earls Cove and you're on community water and on within the fire protection district, the current figure is 14.84%. Nope, I take that back. It's 19.25%. Sorry, read the wrong line. And if you're in North Pender, we're doing quite a bit of work in North Pender. And North Pender is a little bit different than South Pender in that there's quite a few vacant properties that aren't paying user fees. They just pay frontage fees for the capital. And so the percentage of a person in Pender Harbor that's in North Pender, like me, for instance, is looking at right now 14.84% increase. If you're not on any of those things, if you're not, you're around about, let's see, I got it over here, 10% increase. And that's, those figures that I give you are for an average residence in Pender, which is $418,177. Our CFO gave me a very nice chart here to refer to.
So we got 4 more questions here. So Mosi in the chat has asked, how will our current housing/rental shortage be addressed? Will there be funds and plans set aside for this?
The short answer is the SCRD has limited effects on that, and we are extremely concerned about that. what we can do, and it's in our OCP to do, is we can relax the regulations on what you can build on property. And if a business would like to do a subdivision and build houses at cost, and also ensure that the person that buys them doesn't turn around and sell them in a year and pocket the difference, we have the expertise to help do that. We're eager to help do that. And we can put in the necessary riders on the sales to avoid a sale and a profit. So that's what we can do. And we are staffing up to do that. And I'd sure like to see it happen. Did that answer that question? Any other comments, Dean?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, Len, and I think you did a good job alluding to it at the start there, is housing's not really one of the services that we have in our regional district buckets. It's more of a political advocacy effort and working with our municipalities to find ways to pave the way for those types of housing projects to occur. There are things that local governments can do, and municipalities tend to have a little more flexibility than regional districts on these fronts. But a lot of it is relationship building, and I know that there's a lot of work happening at the advocacy level as well, with our political leaders and community groups working with folks from the provincial and federal governments to try to help out and tackle what is becoming a growing and serious rental housing issue on the Sunshine Coast.
So we've another 3 questions here in the Q&A. So an attendee has asked, over 6% of Area A budget is for the health centre. How much money is paid to them? And is there a breakdown for what the money is paid to cover?
The answer is there is both. It's available on the SCRD website under an agenda where we covered that. It's called Community Partners, and it's all there. It was the money was awarded, was approved to go forward in the budget under the Community Partners part of it, but it is repeated in that agenda of February 1st, 2nd, and 5th. I definitely have it on my computer. I'm not sure if I actually have the figure here. I printed a few of them. I can, if I get a minute later on, I will see if I can find that and give you the exact figure, unless you want to be just patient for a half a sec, and I'll see if I have it here. No, sorry, I didn't print that specific one. I didn't quite anticipate that question. Sorry.
Director Lee, we can work on getting that answer prior to the end of this session for that individual. And we got a couple more questions here. We got Thomas, and he's asked, the solid waste budget is about 3.2 million for the SCRD with about 13 employees, which is maybe $1 million. And what is the other $2 million for?
So we're talking the solid waste projects here at 3.2 million?
Yeah, so he's talking about the solid waste budget, yeah.
Yeah, the total budget of solid waste is 5.9 million, and the approved FTE count is for 2021 is 12.1 million, and it's made up of a lot of small projects, and I'm just looking for the bigger ones, and I don't have that right at my fingertips here. Obviously, the biggest chunk of any budget is your expenses, your employees. And then down from that, we have things like, for instance, we're doing $150,000 for the future solid waste disposal option study. We're doing $100,000 increase to the green waste funding program. we're updating our solid waste management plan for 150,000. The recycling depot we were talking about is 30,000. We're actually one that you guys probably would be appreciating, and that is that we're upping our road maintenance by 8,000 to try and take care of those potholes. I like that one. And another big one is the biocover feasibility study, 150,000. And another one you'd like, we're getting traffic control lights for the Pender Harbor transfer station. That's going to cost 10,000. And we're also, the last one that I'd like to mention is we're going to put a book recycling at the Pender Harbor transfer station, and that's another 10,000. So, and there's Andreas there in the chat mentioned that there's the 2.5 million to cover the finished portion of the landfill. That's called landfill closure. So.
Okay. Niels, I believe, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, has asked, are you allowed to use one-time levies to fund specific projects?
One-time levies. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure we are, but perhaps Dean can answer that one for me. A one-time levy, Dean, what would that take? What would that look like?
That would be one where I would be talking to Tina and checking it out. It's probably a tool that exists. How easy it is to wield it on a project by project basis, I'd have to look into, but it's something we can definitely get an answer back on.
But there is one thing that you might be considering, and that is we do borrow for a specific project, typically over a 5-year span. And we end up putting a flat levy against properties to pay it back. It's not a variable tax. We figure out how long it would take to pay over the 5 years. We divide it up amongst the taxpayers that got the service, and it actually pops up on your tax notice. If you have a look, you've got a $17 one still there from when we built the pool, and it's still happening because we had to borrow so much for that.
So we've got a question in relation to short-term rentals here in the chat. It's from DLT, who's asking, could one way of discouraging short-term rentals as a going concern business be to enact a bylaw restricting the number of weeks of short-term rental allowed per housing unit? So for example, this person's saying, you know, if you're to look at 3 to 4 weeks per year, and thereby hopefully that would free up some units for long-term rental.
We just recently redid our bylaw on the short-term rentals, and short-term rentals aren't a thing anymore. They actually are all bed and breakfast. And we defined what home use is, which means that once we defined home use, that means that a homeowner has to be there when the property is rented. Now, to limit short-term rentals, that was one way of doing it. And the other thing that we did is to help the long-term rentals is we said that if you're renting for over 30 days, you don't need the homeowner there. You become the homeowner. And so you can rent the property out for longer terms without having to have a homeowner there. So those are the two things we did in the bylaw. Dean, is there anything else in that bylaw you can think of that we put in there to help that?
No, I mean, one of the things with short-term rentals is we have a bylaw in place now, but by no means is it not something that's going to be continually monitored and looking for ways to deal with it. But we at least have something in place now that helps us get started, recognizing that this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue all over British Columbia.
Before we have the next question, Aidan, I found the funding summary that we talked about earlier. The question was, do you use grants to fund projects? And here's an example of an earlier budget, which was $12,640,000. We're up to, I think, 14 now, but the split was the split was taxation at 824,000. The reserves that we used, but of course those were just previous taxations reserves, were 4 million. And the big one is grants, and it was 7 million. So the fact is that by far and away, grants we lean heavily on grants to get our projects done.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Lee. We'll be coming back to the Pender Harbour Health Centre question that we had earlier. We now have the figures coming in. I just want to go to two more questions here that we have in the Q&A. We got Thomas, who's asked, his comment is, wow, 14 to 19.25% increase. Why not charge far more for water, garbage, or other services used like the pool? Why is water not sub-metered and billed separately? Ditto with garbage. Why not burn the garbage in a high efficiency incinerator?
Oh, I'm not sure I got all those questions.
Do you want me to break them out, Director Lee? Would that help?
Yeah, if you could do that.
Yeah, so I think the first one here is going to be, asking why not, charge far more for water, garbage, or other services that are used like the pool. So maybe we address that one first.
The answer is we do. The water has to pay for itself. So what we charge for water is what it costs us to supply the water. And we try to build up reserves for unexpected failures on the operations side. And we try to build up reserves to keep the cost down when a major part fails, like the treatment plant, for instance, so that we have so we can do something like 30% in our pocket and a 70% borrow. So that's the answer for the water. On the garbage, in fact, most of the garbage is tipping fees, and they keep going up, and they've went up this year again. And so the tipping fees is the people that are dumping the garbage are expected to pay for the garbage. That's what that amounts to. There's some that end up on our taxes, though. I can't think exactly all of what does end up on our taxes, but for instance, we don't charge for the green waste disposal, and that's expensive, and that there's some of our taxes are there for that part of it. So what was the other one?
So the rest of the question was asking why is water not submetered and billed separately, and ditto with garbage. So asking why those two services are not submetered and billed separately.
Well, water is we're putting metering in on throughout the coast, and this year we're putting the software in to start actually managing the water usage through the meters, so we know what they look like. We're not moving to the pay per use yet for water. We need Seashell to get meters in there so that we can do the whole coast at once, and that's what there's an AAP coming up to fund the Seashell meters. So the answer for the water is it's entirely likely that there will be a base amount set that you get for your money, but if you use more, you'll pay more. And that's just speculation on how we decide to do it. That will be decided once we have the capability. And garbage is a paid per use. It's you get weighed as you go across into the dump, and you pay there when you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Lee. I'm just going to go back to our CAO now, Director Lee, just for some further information on the question we had earlier in relation to the Pender Harbour Health Centre.
Can I guess at 42,000? Let's see, Dean, what did you say?
150,000.
Oh, darn, I was really off.
and it is broken down. It's broken down by category, including administration, garbage and hazardous waste disposal, professional fees, maintenance, janitorial, it's all broken down, but the total is about 150 grand.
Thank you.
You were so close, Director.
Yes.
So we have a question here from Donald. Just going to read through it here. The 100% increase to water rates last year appears to have a 10% increase this year. The proposed property increase may see these types of increases going forward. He's asking fiscally, many retirees cannot afford these huge increases. And then, yeah, I'm just trying to decide for the last. So yeah, so asking, will the board, give some consideration, to potentially these increases on going forward here.
Gee.
Do you get that okay, Director Lee? Do you want me to?
I need to find the exact percentages for all of those. I have it somewhere here, but it'll take me just a sec to find it. Mm-hmm. I should have had that one out, I guess. Dean, have you got anything to say about that while I'm busy searching my computer?
Sorry, Len, there was a leaf blower outside and I missed a bunch of that.
I can repeat it for you here. So essentially we've got Don here and Dean, who's speaking about the increase to water rates last year and the fact that, it appears as though we've got a 10% increase this year. With the proposed property increases, we are seeing a lot of these increases going forward. And he's speaking to the fact that, many retirees can't afford those significant increases. So he's just asking, will consideration be given to this going forward?
So I can answer the question now. I have found what I was looking for. If we look at North Pender Harbor Water Service, the increase between 2019 and 2020 was 22%. 20 to 21 is 28%. That's for North Pender. For South Pender, it was 2019 to 2020 was 17.52, and 20 to 21 was 9.66. The regional water for the people that live in Earls Cove and Egmont, respectively, they were looking at 24.98 and 10.38. So them's the figures. So the other part of the question was, Aidan, could you repeat the other part of the question for me?
Yeah, of course, Director Lee. Let me just pull it up here. So essentially this individual is just asking, just stating that, many retirees cannot afford to see these increases, and just asking, will consideration be given going forward to that fact?
I don't think we have the legislative authority to charge groups different depending on age. So I think because the total service, the service itself has to be paid by the users. And the users are defined by a service area. And then we can define groups underneath, like businesses and residents, which relate back to our bylaws. But I don't believe, we're not free to subsidize anybody in the SCRD. Dean, is that correct?
Yeah, you're correct, Director Lee. And I think in general, we're in this particularly challenging time where probably chronic underinvestments have been made for many years leading up to now. So we're in a period of playing catch up, but also at the same time in this new area of asset stewardship and many requirements moving forward to be able to demonstrate asset stewardship. We're also required to start paying for future repairs as we're also catching up. And so for many people now, it feels like a double whammy. And in some ways it is, and it is really challenging. And it's something that the board and elected officials all over the Sunshine Coast are very cognizant of, but it doesn't change the fact that there are certain requirements that we have to do, and some of those things cost money. And those are the difficult decisions that our politicians have to wrestle with at budget time.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions here in the Q&A. So we're just 5 or so minutes left here in the session itself. So Jeff McGuire is asking, do you have any benchmarking of property taxes against other similar communities? He's saying he just did his own comparison versus another home he owns in Ontario.
Not that I'm aware of, but in fact, Pender Harbour is benchmarking against the rest of the SCRD quite regular, because in fact, we have a whole lot of unique services up here. And we do, our overall tax load for the SCRD is lower than other areas when you consider the bottom line of it. I do have some examples here. For instance, Area A is going to have a $69.71 increase in 2021, and that's 14.84%, but the actual dollar is $69.71. We look at Half Moon Bay, their increase is actually $301, but the percent's lower, it's 13.39. They started with a much higher amount, much higher tax rate from the SCRD sides. So I guess you can say we're benchmarked against Half Moon.
Okay, thank you, Director Lee. So we have a question here again from Thomas in the Q&A. He's asking how many employees got laid off or got a wage reduction during COVID, for example, because the Pender Harbour pool was mainly closed. And,
well, I'll tell you what happened during COVID. A lot of our employees were actually paid by the government to continue to do things for the COVID. We got rebates from EOC, but Dean's going to have those figures right on the top of his head, I know. So,
yeah, I wish that were true. What I can say in general is that through COVID, the board approved several reductions in operations. There was a tremendous amount of people who had their hours reduced. The number of layoffs per se, where people were actually given official layoff notice, I didn't think that was a large number. A lot of people were on drastically reduced or 0 hours. We were very fortunate to be able to negotiate flexible arrangements with our union. We had tremendous support from the board. One of the challenges we recognized is that how do you balancing between a drastic reduction in hours, the fact that even if a facility, say like the Pender Pool or Rec Center, even if it isn't open, it has to be staffed to a certain degree, even if it's not open at all. And then we also had to have an eye to reopening. Do we reduce people's hours, but have them available when it's time to restart? Or when it's time to restart, do we start the recruitment process again? And I can tell you in the case of rec centers and pools, once you shut that pool down, good luck finding lifeguards when you go to reopen it. So it was a real difficult balancing act, protecting the tax dollars of the public, meeting the minimum requirements for facilities that aren't open to the public, and ensuring that when we can reopen to the public, we've got people around that we can use to do that. And it was a challenge, it has been a challenge, but there were significant reductions in operating hours as a result of COVID.
Okay, so that's the end of our questions. There's no more that have come in. I'll just open it back up to yourself, Director Lee, and the panel as well, if there's anything else that you'd like to add.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the questions. Some of the questions asked today are going to be available in the form of a frequently asked questions on our website, And so any ones that they're good questions, we probably answered them in some fashion, but Aidan will be going back and developing frequently asked questions based on this, and they'll be available. And you can also watch this session back on the SCRD YouTube page. It'll be there probably in a day or two. Aidan will put it on there. And I'd like to thank the community groups for hosting us, and I'd turn it back to Bill.
And just before that, if I could, Director Lee, we do have a follow-up to the question we received earlier on the one-time levy. So if you bear with me for about 15 seconds, I can give a better response to that one.
Okay, I'll answer another question then at the same time, and that is about the seniors. You can defer utility bills. There's a mechanism to do that. It's how to do it. It's on the website. But anything that's on your tax bill, that can't be deferred. So the SCRD portion of the tax property. The other thing I'd like to say is when we talk about this 15% or 14 or 10, when you get your tax bill, it's not going to look like that. You'll have to find the SCRD portion of the tax bill and add up year to year to find the actual percent increase on the SCRD portion. And that's because if I look at my tax bill, I believe 48% was SCRD and the rest was provincial government on the tax bill. So just like to clarify that part. Dean.
Yeah, so the tax levy question, which was essentially, could you use a one-time tax levy to pay for capital projects? I believe that was the question. So a nice response from our finance department that I'll share. And like most questions like this, it ends up being far more convoluted than it is straightforward. So bear with me. So one-time levy, not really in the pure sense, as in like everyone pays X amount of money one time for 1 year. As Director Lee previously stated, parcel taxes such as those for the Pender Harbor Pool are levied to repay the debt incurred to upgrade that facility. So the amount levied is the same per parcel. That said, there is an extensive legislative process required before a parcel tax can be implemented, and it would generally be for a period of at least 20 years. One-time projects can also be funded through taxation, which would in effect be a one-time tax levy. In other words, we could increase taxation by $100,000 in 2021 to pay for a specific project, but then taxation would decrease by $100,000 in 2022, all things being equal, if that's how we did that. So that's a convoluted way of saying typically no.
And I'd like to correct one of my statements, by the way. Utility bills, we did allow them to be deferred in 2020 for a few months because of COVID, but that was a one-time. Utility bills can't be deferred. I think property taxes can, but I'm not sure if the SCRD portion of the property taxes can be deferred. Do you know that, Dean?
I'm not sure. I believe they may, and we may get an answer here shortly, but if we don't, we'll make sure that answer is posted as part of the FAQ.
Well, okay, I'll turn it back to Bill now because he might even have the answer, but he's going to.
Well, the answer is yes, you can defer your property taxes, but there are rules, and the rules, it depends on your age. For instance, if you're 60 years old and you have some sort of a pension, like a disability pension, you can defer your taxes. And then it moves, I believe, to age 65, whereby anybody over 65 can defer their taxes. But remember, they're only deferred until you sell your house, at which time it has to be repaid. And there is an interest charge, although the interest charges are fairly low. So it is a good way to move things off to your children and grandchildren, if you so desire, but at least it saves you from that big tax bill every year. So that's my answer to that question. So I think we're all done. It's been a great meeting. I think a lot of tough questions in many respects and never easy answers, particularly when it comes to taxes. I think we realize, though, that we're all in this together. And if we wake up in the morning and we turn on that tap and there's no water that comes out of it, we're going to start asking an awful lot of questions. And the folks that are here today from the SCRD are those people that are trying to make sure that those taps are fully loaded with water when you turn them on, and many other things that they do. It's shown me every time I delve into this that it's a really complex issue when it comes to taxes. There's just no easy answers, and there's so much that goes into deciding how much we get charged and why we get charged, et cetera. And I'm glad I'm not the one that sits on the pre-budget and budget meetings to try to sort it all out, particularly when you're trying to work with the other directors on the board and everybody's trying to squeeze as much as they can out of their district and without affecting another district. So it's a tough road to hoe. So I'll close on that note, but on behalf of my co-chairs, Peter and Dave, we'd like to thank you for attending this meeting. And as was said earlier, please link to the SCRD if you want any further answers to your questions. And I know Len is always available by telephone or email to answer questions as well. So I think it's helped all of us to understand the complexities of governing a big area like Area A. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending. So with that, we'll end the meeting. Thank you very much, Len, and everybody else. It's great.
Thank you, guys.